make my my background a little nicer later, but I am in Sacramento for the League of California Cities annual conference, and so I am working out of my car right now. But I'd like to say good afternoon. Welcome to our 5th Vision Zero Task Force meeting for the City of San Jose. My name is Raul Perales. I am your council representative here in District 3 and your task force chair. And we also have here our task force vice chair, Councilmember Foley, who will be facilitating part of the meeting as well. And before we get started, I would like to take a few minutes to remember the 25 people who have perished on our streets since our last task force meeting, June 2nd. And I'm going to call out names of 12 road traffic victims, and then our vice chair, Councilmember Foley, will call out the names of 13. Number 1, male motorcyclist, Eric Thomas Burton, Jamie Peck, Diana Maria Chacon, a male motorcyclist, Arturo Plancarte, Michael Anthony Barrios, José Melchor, David Sandoval, female pedestrian, a male pedestrian, and a male motorcyclist.
Whoops, I'm muted and I'm reading these. I'll start all over. Neil Sengupta, male bicyclist, male pedestrian, male pedestrian, Gisela Vargas, Huang Dang, male pedestrian, male pedestrian, female pedestrian, Ravneel Vilash, Wilson Sivangsai, female driver, male pedestrian.
All right, sorry, I too was on mute. Well, thank you very much. We do take a moment at the beginning of each of these meetings to humanize what we're doing here in the work of Vision Zero, as we feel it's important that we do so considering the work that we do. So on September 25th of 2020, the City of San Jose kicked off the first task force meeting to bring together stakeholders at the county, the city, and our community level to help guide Vision Zero strategies to make our streets safer. And today's meeting is the 5th meeting of the Vision Zero Task Force. In particular, the task force is intended to do the following: to provide quarterly traffic fatality and severe injury reports, to review quarterly traffic enforcement given to the top 5 causes of fatal and severe injuries, or KSIs, to bring together decision makers from the city, county, and to leverage resources for a shared goal of reducing traffic fatalities, and to guide implementation of the Vision Zero action plan. And recalling last year's Vision Zero task force meetings, the first task force meeting was a kickoff. The second meeting had a theme of outreach. The third meeting was about data. And the fourth meeting focused on progress the Vision Zero program has been making and what the City of San Jose is working on in the second half of the year. And today we will learn some updates on recent Vision Zero investments and community outreach events. Vision Zero is an effort that brings data analysis and community outreach together to better understand of which safety projects and strategic cross-department initiatives are the most impactful at reducing crashes, severe and fatal injuries, and to prioritize safety projects and infrastructure improvements based on data and community feedback. The Vision Zero team recently completed the Center Road Quick Build project. After 3 fatalities that involved people walking at Monterey Road and Kirtner Avenue at Tolley intersection, the Vision Zero team quickly incorporated with other divisions and agencies to explore approaches for safety improvements at that intersection as well. Additionally, as part of the Vision Zero program, San Jose DOT hired a consulting firm, Fair and Peers, to conduct outreach at 8 locations in San Jose, including Kirtner Avenue, where we had recent fatalities. And today we will hear from DOT and Fair and Peers about those efforts. Throughout today's meeting, I encourage everybody to think about how DOT can better leverage opportunities to collaborate with other departments and your respective agencies to improve street safety. There will be a task force member discussion after each presentation, 15 minutes after reports and updates, where we will hear about the second quarter traffic fatality data and action plan progress, and then also after DOT and the consultant's presentation. That'll be followed by our open forum for our public comment at the end of the meeting. And appreciate again your participation. And we will now be doing a roll call. I'll be calling out the department organization name, and if there was representative that is here could identify themselves by your name and your title, that would be appreciated. So you've heard from me and our vice chair. So we have with the, let's see here, John Risto.
Thanks, Council Member John Risto, Director of Transportation, City of San Jose.
Thank you. And Sergeant Doug Gates. How you doing, Doug?
I'm doing well, sir.
We have Chief Stepien. I know we didn't get an RFCP. I don't know if he was able to make it from Fire. And did we have another representative from San Jose Fire? Doesn't seem like it. Okay, Michelle Kimball, or a representative from Public Works?
Yes, Michelle Kimball, Senior Engineer with Public Works.
Thank you, welcome. Neil Rufino?
Good afternoon, Neil Rufino, Assistant Director, Parks, Recreation, Neighborhood Services.
Sal Alvarez, or someone from Economic Development?
Hi, Sal Alvarez, the Office of Economic Development.
Thank you. Reagan Henniger?
Hi, Reagan Henninger, Deputy Director of the City of San Jose's Housing Department.
Welcome, thank you. Angelique Gaeta?
Good afternoon, Angelique Gaeta, Chief of Systems Safety and Security with VTA.
Thank you. Harry Freitas?
Hi, I'm Harry Freitas. I'm with County Roads and Airports Department.
Thank you. Rhonda McClinton Brown?
This is Michelle Wexler from Santa Clara County Public Health.
Oh, thank you very much. Jackie Lowther?
Jackie Lowther with Santa Clara County EMS.
Thank you. And from the Examiner Coroner's Office, Michelle Jordan or Josefina Covarrubias?
Hi, yes, good afternoon. Josefina Covarrubias from the Medical Examiner Coroner's Office.
Thank you. Perdón, Josefina. Dr. Marianne Duan?
Hello, this is Dr. Marianne Dewan, Santa Clara County Superintendent of Schools.
Welcome, thank you. Teresa Doe? I don't think we got an RSVP. Teresa Doe, new representative with CalWalks. And then Diana Crumedy?
Yes, Diana Crumedy with Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition.
Welcome, thank you. And Joe Glenn?
Yes, hi, I'm Joe Glenn, member of ARP San Jose and a member of the San Jose City Advocacy Team.
Thank you, welcome. Is there anybody that I might have missed? You can just unmute and welcome yourself now.
I'll add that Teresa Doe is here, but she is, we need to promote her to panelist.
I'm Anant Prasad with the County of Santa Clara, Roads and Airports. I'm the Acting Deputy Director.
Mike Obrio, Deputy Director, Citywide Planning, San Jose.
Thank you.
Lauren Ledbetter, VTA Bicycle and Pedestrian Program.
Ellen Tallow, County Transportation Planner at Roads and Airports.
All right, take the pause as we've got everybody. Thank you very much for introducing yourselves, and thank you to everybody for joining us on this collaboration. So as we have done in the past, our meeting minutes of the 4th Vision Zero Task Force meeting from June 4th were posted on the Vision Zero website, and you can reach out to staff if you have any comments or would like any corrections on that. We don't take a vote on that. Some housekeeping. So this meeting is being recorded and will be posted. The panelists have been muted by default. Since we have a large group, please do click on the raise hand function in your toolbar to be called on, and then mute and unmute accordingly. And if you could please rename yourself to ensure that your name is correct there, and if you'd like to include your agency as well. Attendees will have an opportunity to publicly comment at the open forum section. This is due to the large number of panelists and the limited time that we have here. Speaking of limited time, we're going to do our very best to stay on the prescribed times for the agenda. An open forum will be at the end of the meeting if you intend to speak during today's open forum. If you don't mind raising your hand or pressing *9 to get in the queue, that'll help us gauge how much time we'll need to leave for the open forum at the end there. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 2, which is our reports and updates. Jesse Minthroth will give us some updates on Vision Zero key metrics, updates on the Vision Zero action plan, priority action areas will follow, presented by Jesse from DOT and Sergeant Doug Gates, from SJPD. And our task force member discussion will follow that presentation, and a quarterly update on Vision Zero key metrics. Our 2020 action plan, priority action area to build robust data analytic tools, form a Vision Zero task force, strategize traffic enforcement, increase community outreach and engagement, and implement quick build data-driven safety improvements, and prioritize resources on high KSI corridors. So I believe now I'll turn it over.
Great, thank you, Chair and Council Member, for the introduction. My name is Jesse Minthroth, and I'm the Vision Zero Program Manager here at the San Jose Department of Transportation. And I'll be doing this part of the presentation. And I just, want to begin with an acknowledgement following the list of names that the Councilmember Perales and Councilmember Foley read. That yes, these are numbers, and also they are people, they're neighbors, and are their family. So don't want to, I want that to be out there when we talk about these numbers of people who died in traffic violence here in San Jose. So looking at the last 10 years, people who've seen this presentation before be familiar with the growth in traffic fatalities basically having doubled from 2010 and 2012 to a peak of 60 in 2015 and 2019. Here, we have previously talked about the data from 2020, and we are talking about half of the year of data, a little bit more than half of the year of data from 2021, showing up to September 21st in the last column on the right. We are currently at 45, but actually we just heard of another one today, 46 traffic fatalities. The one that we've just heard about today is a delayed pedestrian fatality. So we are just getting the information about it now. So it's not included in the slides, but we just want to mention that. So talking of the 45 traffic fatalities that are on the slides, 18 of them are people killed while walking, which is higher than we have been at this point, both in the most recent year, which could perhaps be an aberration because the pandemic year is very unusual for so many ways, that is 2020. And then we also wanted to compare 2019 because 2019 is the last full sort of old normal data year, and also was a peak year. So at this moment, we are unfortunately ahead of where we were in that peak year. So looking at traffic crashes by month, the top left category is cumulative injuries. And in that category, 2021 is currently below, or rather at the bottom of the range of the last 5 years of 2016 to 2020. But if you go to the right side of the slide, the cumulative fatal and severe injuries by month, we are on the high of the last 5-year range currently. And then the bottom left, cumulative fatalities by month. This one's interesting because you can see that at the beginning of the year, we were below the range. And then as we got to sort of, May, June, then we started to go above the range of the last 5 years. And we suspect that the reason for this is that the reopening of the state on June 15th is sort of what happened around that time, or what was beginning to happen around that time. But in any case, being above the normal range is worrisome, and we hope that we can work on this, through the strategies that we employ through this task force and working with the other departments that are part of this call. But in sum, we move into the next slide where we show a list of the fatalities that have happened since our last meeting on June 4th. And this was the first time that we had to lower the font size because there were so many people. So there were 15 fatalities in a 2-month period, and most of them involved people killed while walking. So this is the slide, and just for these colors, the yellow color are people hit while walking. The blue color is motor vehicle occupant. The gray is motorcycle, and the orange is bicycle. So there are a lot of lines here, a lot of people hit while walking, and a lot of people crossing outside the crosswalk. So we've created this new slide to look at the year-to-date fatalities, including the 45 that we knew about before today. So we have the 18 killed while walking, 12 in motor vehicle occupants, 7 as cyclists, which, by the way, is as high as the recent 5 years have been, and 8 on motorcycles. That's higher than any recent year for motorcycles. So as for a bit more on the breakdown, 49% occurring on our priority safety corridors. That is higher than usual. We typically see 30 to 40% in a year. So we're seeing more clustering of the fatal injuries on our priority safety corridors, and particularly Monterey Road. We've been really attentive to Monterey Road recently because we've had 3 fatalities at one intersection, and that is going to be the subject of a slide coming up farther down, so I'll talk about it then. But 4 of these 7 people we've confirmed by working with our task force, working with the medical examiner coroner, who is part of this task force, that 7 of those, of the 7, 4 meet their definition for unhoused. And at the intersection, which is the subject, there were 3 of them as occurred, which is the intersection of Curtin Tully, that is 3 of 3. So going back to the citywide numbers, 69% occurred in the dark. We mentioned the high number involving motorcycle riders, which is higher than any recent year already. And the high number and high percentage of people killed while walking. Also the high number of people crossing outside crosswalks. And we've also noticed that a very high percentage involved male drivers. And also we've previously raised the issue of speeding as the top known violation leading to fatal and severe injury. So 31% of this number were caused by speeding drivers. Moving now into the Vision Zero Action Plan update and the 6 sections, which I won't read here, but I'll go into slides on each topic. So in the topic of building robust data analytics tools, the first area of the action plan, we began working with a vendor called Urban Logic through the city's Startup and Residence program in March 2021. And they are building a platform that we'll be able to use inside the city, specifically inside the DOT, to enable our project engineers, project managers, to be able to look up the city's data much more quickly, particularly in reference to crashes and injuries than was previously possible. And so we're really excited to be rolling this out, hopefully to our staff really soon, definitely by October. And then another new project that we wanted to mention is the type of technology called near miss. We previously have worked with Verizon on 3 intersections, but given all of the recent fatalities at Monterey and Kirtner, we are going to also begin another pilot with another company to have near miss cameras in that location to add to the amount of data that we have on that location. For context, about 3 fatalities in 1 intersection. We don't have any other intersections in San Jose that have 3 fatalities in 1 year. I'm not sure that we have any any intersections that have 2 fatalities in 1 year. So that's how that location became selected for this project. As all of you are here, this is the second area of the Vision Zero action plan to form a Vision Zero task force. And on this slide now we've highlighted today's date and also wanted to make people aware of the next several dates for the Vision Zero task force coming up, which are December 10th, 2021, March 28th, 2022, and June 30th, 2022. And the information to join those will be on our website at visionzerosj.org. And for this slide, I would like to hand over the mic to Sergeant Gates from the San Jose Police Department.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Jesse. This just speaks to the breakdown of the last 3 years of kind of how we've targeted enforcement in the motor unit. Last year, obviously, during the pandemic, our officers tried to minimize the number of contacts they had with public to minimize their exposure to COVID. So that's why we had a very large increase in warnings. People were still being stopped because we felt it was still very important to be out there and be visible. So those majority of stops concluded in a warning. Moving forward to 2021, everybody in our unit currently has been vaccinated. We're still staying with the county protocols for safety, but we have now shifted gears a little more and gone back to citations versus warnings because we found that really a citation for the usually speed sticks with someone much longer than just a simple warning and hopefully corrects their driving habits in the future. So that's where we're at for those. And speaking to some of the injuries and the fatalities, I believe Lieutenant Anaya has spoken about our unit going to 2 teams, one being day shift to mainly focus on the morning commute and school hours. And then our second team will be pushed to a swing shift or a modified swing shift for our department so that we can also now focus on the evening commute and some of those hours of darkness and hopefully combat some of those injuries and fatalities.
Thank you, Sergeant Gates. I'll move on to the next slide. So the 4th area of the Vision Zero action plan is to increase community and outreach and engagement. And so we are excited to soon be starting our strategic communications safety messaging contract with MIG. A second topic that we wanted to talk about is that we are piloting school streets this year, which we're calling Viva Escuela San Jose. And so our walk and roll unit reached out to 52 schools to look for interest, and we've gotten interest, and we'll be piloting this program with 2 schools in District 3, which are Backrot Elementary on Wednesday, September 29th, and Horace Mann Elementary on Friday, October 1st. And we're excited to see how those events go and potentially to expand it to more schools in the future. We also had a safety walk audit program in 8 locations that was funded by the California Office of Traffic Safety, working with the consultant Fair and Peers. And there's a list of locations here. And we'll be having a presentation from Steve Davis of Fair and Peers later in this meeting today. So we'll learn more about that then. We wanted within the area of the quick build data-driven safety improvements to talk about the intersection where we've had 3 fatalities so far this year, because this is very unusual. And so the intersection of Monterey Road, Kirtner Avenue, and Tully, Kirtner becomes Tully and Tully becomes Kirtner. We've had 3 fatalities there. They've all occurred either in the north crosswalk or a few feet north of the north crosswalk. So you can see the image on the right side of this slide. They're all represented by the little green icons a little bit north of the main intersection. One person was in a mobility, actually 2 people were using mobility devices, one a walker and one in a wheelchair. And another person was walking. And so we have been really focused on what we can do at this location. In addition to the 3 fatalities, which are shown close to the intersection, there are another 2 fatalities that have occurred near here. One of them about 600 feet north of the entrance to the plant, which is the next signalized intersection north of Tully Kirtner. And so that one is located very close to the railroad crossing. And then another one occurred farther up near San Jose Avenue. And through the task force, and so working with some of you who are panelists or representatives on this call now, we have determined through working with the medical examiner coroner which of these were, which people were considered unhoused by their definition. And so all 3 of the people who are at the main intersection of Monterey and Kirtner Tully are considered unhoused. And then we've reached out both to other departments to see what we can do, worked with the council member, and also worked with units inside DOT. And so we wanted to bring you up to date to where we are so far. We are working to install what's called median island fencing along the median in the center of the roadway. So that would go from the intersection of Kirtner Tully up to the railroad effectively. And with a break at the intersection of the entrance to the plant. And we are partnering with housing to do outreach to the unhoused population. And so building on other types of messaging that they've done to unhoused populations in San Jose, looking at the sort of formatting of their flyer, we're using that to build one about this topic. We are also doing intersection safety redesign of the intersection itself. That would be of Monterey and Kirtner Tully. There's a pavement project that's coming there in 2022. And so we will do some redesign in the intersection as part of that project. And so we'll be using quick build materials on top of that pavement project. We're also discussing safety audit and outreach with the VTA about their services and bus stops on this corridor, and ability to perhaps run some of the same safety messaging that we'd be distributing, perhaps as flyers with working at the housing department. We could also see about putting them in the advertising spaces on bus shelters here, working with the VTA. And we're also exploring some signal timing operation improvements, particularly that the 3 fatalities that occurred at the intersection all occurred at nighttime, which is not the busiest time at the intersection. It's a relatively low volume time in terms of vehicle traffic. And so we're looking to see if there's some signal timing improvements that we could implement through DOT in the evening hours there. And also we're doing targeted outreach with our safety education staff at DOT with some of the housing around there already. So that pretty much is where we are so far on working on this intersection, but we're happy to talk more about it with our task force. Any ideas that people may have to leverage opportunities in their departments. So I'm going to move on to talking a little bit about Center Road. Center Road is the first of the 15 priority safety corridors that are under the city's jurisdiction, 17 total. The other 2 are under the county's jurisdiction. And I am going to pass over the mic to Vu Dao to talk about this slide.
Thank you, Jesse. Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the task force. As you know, quick build strategy is one of the key initiatives in the Vision Zero action plan. And quick build means using low cost temporary material to construct safety improvements. In this past year, we completed about 6 miles of roadway through quick build, and Center Road was the first one. The Center Road project was built based on the framework established from a complete street study that was completed last year. And as part of that study, we worked with the project stakeholders and the communities to come up with a vision for the corridor. And we were able to bring that vision to reality through the use of quick build by collaborating and leveraging an existing capital improvement project and our payment project. So this project is a little bit unique where it has permanent and quick build temporary components. So in this project, we remove the access travel lanes to reallocate the space for safer bike lanes by putting in more protections, such as plastic posts or using parked vehicles for physical separation. We also improved the intersection by converting standard crosswalks to high visibility crosswalk and adding curb extension at the corners using paint and plastic to help slow down vehicle speed. We also did minor signal modifications such as yellow signal backplates and some signal timing elements. So some of the images that you see on the sides from the improvement on Center Road. We also have a short video to showcase the before and after, just to share with you what we have done out there so that you can see the difference between the two. So this is, sorry, could you pause for 1 second? Yeah, so this is Central Road. We put together a video to share with you side by side. So the left frame is the pre-existing condition where there were no improvements. And then the frame on the right is the after with improvements. So during the video, I encourage you to scan back and forth between the two to see the difference in the improvements. And I will narrate through the video. So we are heading northbound on Central Road, and this is near Serenade, which is not too far away from Monterey Road. We're heading north toward Tully and toward downtown. With that said, could you play the video, please? As you can see on the right-hand side, we have protected bike lanes, and we're heading up to a corners where you can see that we significantly bulbing out the corner, what we call curb extension or bulb out, using paint and plastic posts to tighten up the corner and really slowing down the vehicles making a turn. Here we are at Lewis. Used to be 3 lanes, and we narrowed down to 2 lanes. As you can see, new bike lanes with amber space and also using plastic posts to provide a physical separation. Coming up to an existing crosswalk with flashing beacon. So that was there before. We refreshing the paint to make it even more visible. So here we have the bike lanes, and what we have done here is we tucked the bike lane between the vehicles. As you can see on the right-hand side, the vehicles are now pushed away from the curb, and then we have the bike lane. So that will provide extra protection for the bicyclists. It will be more obvious as we go through the corridor. At the intersection, we are converting all of the standard crosswalk to high visibility. Here you can see that the bike lanes are sandwiched between the parked vehicles and the curbside. And again, there are 3 lanes, as you can see on the left side. We reduced down to 2 lanes each direction, and we also add in the median island, and that is the permanent improvement that I mentioned about. Heading north, as you can see on the right, there's a bicyclist riding along there. Now he feels a lot safer with all of the extra space that he has, as well as the vertical protection that he has. So he's feeling a lot safer than before. There's also 2 lanes in each direction compared to 3 lanes before, and also a median island. So it makes the roadway look a lot narrower than before, and that would make speeding less enticing. We're heading up to Tully Road, where the video will end. So that was a video that we put together to showcase and share with you on some of the things that we are doing as part of the quick build under the Vision Zero action plan, and we will continue to move forward in that direction. Thank you for your time. Back to you, Jesse.
Thank you. Just a second to switch back. Okay, so our last slide about the Vision Zero action plan updates, the last section is to prioritize resources on high fatal and severe injury corridors and districts. And under that category, we'd like to let everyone know that we were awarded a grant from the Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program for just over $500,000 to create a pedestrian safety plan for San Jose. So that's exciting news. The grant has 3 sections and will begin in November, meaning that we're probably not likely to see the outreach and engagement section of it start until sometime in 2022. However, we just wanted to tell everyone about the grant, about the program that'll be starting. We created maps that look like the one on the right, which is a map of District 3, in order to, at first, well, we already had data telling us which of the districts in San Jose have the most fatal and severe injuries, and those districts are 3, 5, 6, and 7. And so they are the center of this plan. We'll be doing more work in those districts that have more fatal and severe injuries. And we will also be doing work that's basically work that can be implemented all over the city. So in the second section, the multi-stakeholder safety and placemaking strategy section, we have a number of topics that we'll be doing research about with the consultant that we bring on through a process that hasn't started yet to figure out things that can be done to improve safety and the quality of being a pedestrian in San Jose all over town. They include things like making it safer and more appealing to use transit, and working on the undersides of elevated highways, things like that. Also trying to find ways that it would be cheaper for the city to afford more signal infrastructure. The project will begin with inclusive outreach to determine focus areas, and that part of the project will be done by California Walks, who is our co-applicant on this grant. The final area that we wanted to do some updates about was our legislative work. And so just to give the update on some of the work that we do with other cities in California, we have been working with other cities on this assembly bill, AB 43, which is led by Assembly Member Laura Friedman from Southern California. This bill is to give municipalities more flexibility to lower the posted speed limit on high injury and high fatality streets near vulnerable populations, and also in areas that are contiguous with business activity districts. And so that bill has made it through the Assembly and Senate and is waiting to get signed by the governor. And we, along with the other cities working on this bill, have submitted a letter to the governor from Mayor Liccardo to encourage that he sign this bill. And so that's the end of this part of the presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to Chair Perales.
Yeah, thank you very much for the updates. And we'll now open it up for comments or questions from our task force members. And I'm looking over at the raised hand section. First, I'll go to my vice chair.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Really good presentation. I appreciate all of the data. Sergeant Gates, I have a question for you regarding the citations that you've issued. So maybe we could go to slide 11. The quarter number set for second quarter is 3,748. Is that cumulative, or that is just what was issued in the second quarter? Sergeant Gates, are you there?
We might have lost him at the
We
moment.
might have lost him. Okay, does anyone know if, what I'm trying to understand is the citations in the first quarter were 2761. In the second quarter, it's 3748. Are those quarter by quarter numbers, or are they cumulative? Jesse, do you know?
I expect that they are quarterly and not cumulative. So I think they'd be more comparable to the Q2 2019 at the top.
Okay, very, very good. Thank you. So we've gone from issuing warnings to issuing citations, which I think will be a good deterrent, and that's good to hear. The other question I had is regarding the School Streets Pilot Project. Can you tell me what that is? Give me some details on that.
Yes, those are 2-hour closures on the block in front of that school. And they are to encourage walking and rolling to school. We typically, this time of year, have a day called International Walk to School Day. But the way that that's being done this year is different than in past years. You know, some schools don't want other people than their students coming to their doorstep for, you know, even if it's to encourage walking and biking. So depending on school interest really is how we did this pilot. And so these two schools were interested in doing this. These days are not being they're not being advertised besides being mentioned here. They're primarily being advertised to their school populations. And so we're working with all other areas of government that typically work on special event street closures to do the coordination around this. For example, you know, do these blocks have a bus running on them? If they do, then we would ideally prioritize a different block that doesn't have a bus running on them. But, you know, in the case that they do, we also can work with the VTA to let their drivers know that for that 2-hour period, for example, there might be a detour. So we've been working with, so actually Ann Jasper specifically, who's the head of the Walk and Roll program, has been working on coordinating this program. And she is part of the Vision Zero staff. And so that is sort of a quick introduction to what they are in terms of how long they are. But since it's the first time we're doing it, the exact presentation of what they are, I think will depend somewhat on the partners that take part in this. So we've reached out to you know, Cal Walks and the Bike Coalition to see if they're interested, and other nonprofits as well. So I know that there'll be a number of organizations tabling there and having interactive, fun things for kids up front. So that's the sort of main idea behind it.
It's a great idea to encourage our kids and parents to walk their kids and ride their bikes to school when they can and get out of their vehicles. We know that parents are as guilty as anyone in bad behavior, driving their kids and dropping them off around elementary school all the way up to high school campuses. So I think the Rock and Roll program, which is what this is emulating, it sounds like, was a great program. I participated in many myself as a previous school board member, and kids had a lot of fun, and there's a lot of good information out there about provided to the kids, and a lot of energy. So I'm really glad to see that we're doing that and promoting it. And I suspect it will be a little bit different under the pandemic because a lot of those organizations can't be present on campuses. It's only even parents aren't allowed on campuses currently. So thank you for that. Those were all my questions. One final thing is, Jesse, I do appreciate that you mentioned that while we read the names of those who have passed on our streets, they are not numbers, they are human beings, and their deaths are tragic, and we need to do what we can to make our streets safe. And that's what Vision Zero is focused on, making our streets safer for all of those on our roads. Thank you.
Okay, and I don't see any other hands up. No other comments, questions. I did, it looks like Sergeant Gates was having some connection issues, but Councilor Foley, I did message him by phone, and he did agree that Jesse was correct. It is quarterly data.
Great, thank you.
And yes, we had mentioned that last time, that obviously there was a shift to warnings, which I think is appreciated during the pandemic. But I think we also saw the uptick just of kind of the open roads, speeding, and certainly didn't see any less incidents, vehicular incidents. And so I too am happy that we're back to now actually enforcing, and hopefully that can continue to disincentivize people to be speeding and violating our traffic laws. Okay, no other questions, then we will move forward to, let's see here. All right. We'll go and welcome now Cordell Bailey, our Traffic Safety Education Officer with DOT, and Steve Davis, our the Senior Associate at Fair and Pierce. They're going to be providing an update on the 8 safety walk audits. The presentation is going to be about 15 minutes, followed by Q&A from the task force and open forum where public can be able to ask questions.
Great. I'm just turning it over to, I don't know if we have Cordell, if you want to say hello briefly about this program.
Yes, hi, thanks, Jesse. Hi, everyone. Cordell Bailey, your neighborhood traffic safety guy. Friendly, of course. Good to see you all virtually. So this grant is a competitive grant that we write every year through the Office of Traffic Safety. Every year it has a different theme. This year's theme was these virtual walk audits or virtual safety kind of walking tours through the neighborhood. We conducted a total of 8 of them, and Steve will talk a little bit more about that from Fair and Pierce. But I just wanted to say that this was a really smashing success, in my opinion. I had some hesitations initially with this. You know, to get our community out there virtually is difficult, to say the least. Many of you have done neighborhood association meetings and different things out there, but we had fantastic attendance and really well attended and got some great information. Really all I have to say about that. Steve, do you want to go ahead and share some details on this?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks, Cordell. And actually, I guess you can go ahead and flip to the next slide. So I'll introduce myself. As was mentioned, I'm Steve Davis with Fair and Pierce. I'm a senior associate and the lead for our San Jose office. So first, I just want to give a little background about us and why we're here. As I mentioned, we have an office in San Jose. We have a long-standing presence here. We've been in San Jose for about 25 years and are a California-based firm. But overall, our firm is really a national leader in trying to work on safety plan development. So we've been involved with the Vision Zero network and identifying what the core elements of Vision Zero were supposed to be. We've worked extensively with the Federal Highway Administration on the development of their safe system approach for addressing safety on our streets. And then I've worked really from coast to coast. I've been involved in Alaska for Vision Zero plans. We've worked in Hawaii, Florida, all across the country. but locally have done quite a lot of safety work as well, including the Vision Zero and subsequent roadway safety plans in Sunnyvale, and quite recently the status report and action plan update for the city of Fremont on their Vision Zero plan. And then for myself personally, I'm also a San Jose resident. I actually live in District 9. Council member Foley is my council member. So we were excited to be a part of this. We like to contribute to seeing safety enhanced in our community. And then I think Jesse had alluded previously to some programs we had done, that the city had done through a grant last year around 2 schools in the city. We were a part of that and helped the city deliver some really focused stakeholder engagement, some virtual walk audits to look at issues around those neighborhoods, and that ultimately led to active transportation grants that were applied for and successful. So some quick build improvements that are coming in those areas. If you want to go to the next slide. So what we were doing was really looking to build upon that effort when we pursued this project that came out from the city. Since this is also funded through the OTS grant, the city put out the request, we replied to that, and the goal was to deliver similar style walking tours, but really aimed at the whole community at large across these 8 focus areas, as opposed to the more narrow stakeholder groups and school officials. And so the primary goals were to not just rely on the data. We've heard throughout this meeting about the separation between the stories and the people versus the data themselves. We wanted to capture that too. So we did share the data, we did review the data for each of the focus areas, but also recognize that in many cases, the experts of streets around neighborhoods or specific corridors are the people who live, work, walk, bike there. So that's what we were hoping to capture. We wanted to learn from those folks, understand what their experiences are in the real world, so that we can capture a holistic view between those 2 different facets. And then the goal, after collecting all that input through a few different means that we'll get into, was to figure out what does that give us in terms of opportunities to fix some of the issues that we're hearing about and that we're seeing in the data, and really start to develop a suite of potential projects across these different focus areas. And then that really sets the city up to consider planning, design, and construction funding through grants or otherwise in the future. So if we go to the next slide, we can just show a quick overview of what the areas are. So the 8 areas you can see here, one of them, Jackson Avenue, that's up towards the top right, is directly on a Vision Zero priority safety corridor. But a majority of the other corridors are actually nearby or adjacent to, or in some cases, the neighborhoods are bounded by priority safety corridors. So overall, these were identified in collaboration with the safety data analytics, but also with the council offices and other city staff, just to identify areas that were of an overall, area-wide concern for safety, and areas that we had been seeing and hearing about, both through the data and anecdotally. There being issues that have been playing out around safe interactions for users on the roadways. Let's go to the next slide. So the first goal, obviously, is you want to get as many people to come out as we can. So we had taken a pretty extensive approach. Give kudos to city staff, Colin, and certainly Cordell was out there beating the bushes, trying to get everyone out that we could. We prepared flyers that were sent out virtually and in some cases physically. There were next door posts, Twitter. We used pretty much every social media, opportunity that we could come up with. And then, posting these things where we could, got help from schools. Certainly the council offices were major players in making these successful. But the goal had been to get as much input as we could at these events. So quite a bit of effort went in up front, both from our team, but especially I would say from the city's team, trying to round up as many people as we could. And if we go to the next slide, you can see that overall, I would say that was pretty successful. So in total, across the 8 events, we ended up having a total of 200 participants. So obviously that works out to an average of about 25. Some of them were as high as 40 or more participants. So you can see Kirtner Avenue and Via Valiente, Rockavich Way. Those 2 events had quite a lot of folks that were engaged. As part of each event, we did a poll of those who were there to understand what their relationship was to the area that we're discussing. So trying to get an understanding of, are we talking to residents? Are we talking to people who mostly drive? Or are they, in some cases, you have more transit riders or people walking and biking, and they could select more than one option. So sometimes it's all of the above. But in most cases, your turnout typically is strongest in areas where there are nearby residential areas. It's a little harder to capture people who are, traveling to businesses and getting them to turn out for these kinds of events. So overall, really, really solid participation across the board. So just wanted to provide a brief summary of how these went overall. So the way that the events generally worked is we would start out with a brief slideshow, usually 10 minutes or so, that was provided in both English and Spanish, assuming there were people in attendance who wished to have the availability of Spanish interpretation. And we would walk through what the background of the Vision Zero program was, share some of the efforts that have been done to date. We shared some of the same information about the Center Road corridor and what those kinds of improvements can look like. And then also we would share what exists in the neighborhood we're discussing today or along the corridor we're discussing today. What are the bike lanes? Where are there sidewalks? And what collision data do we have that we can share? And in some cases, also shared the stories of our citizens or our transportation system users who have been the victims of severe injuries or fatalities out there. After that, we generally would spend most of our time doing a tour or an audit, depending which term you like to use, of the area that we were studying for that event. So we would go through from our perspective as consultants in advance of the event. We would go through and actually do a virtual tour of the entire area using Street View, like you're seeing here on Google. And then we would go out there after that, once we had notes to work from, and actually walk the entire neighborhoods or the entire corridor and take notes and photos there as well. Then we put together a map that included those areas that we'd walked in the photos and planned a route to walk through virtually with the community, with the participants during the event. And then tried to leave time where if you had somewhere that wasn't directly on our planned route, that we could go look at those areas too. In some cases that took us out of the neighborhood that we were in immediately and looked around areas in the area around that as well. So generally tried to use that as an opportunity to do an approximation of what we would do with an in-person walking tour, with one of the real benefits of that being that we had an opportunity to cover in some ways larger distances than we would if we were a group of people actually physically out there on the street. But the goal really was just to facilitate a conversation amongst the attendees to understand what they see, what they experience, and what they feel the issues are out there. And in some cases, what they think might be solutions to some of what they see, because that can often be something that the community can provide more input on than we might expect. And then, also had opportunity for them to ask questions and gain a better understanding of what the goals are and how some of these things might be accomplished. So, like in the case that you're looking at here from the Moreland School virtual walking tour, we were walking through the area near the school on Campbell Avenue, and there were a lot of discussion points around this offset intersection and some of the interactions that causes for pedestrians. And it was something that we were able to capture pretty well virtually by being able to use the combination of Street View and sharing photos that we had taken from our research. Next slide. Just a couple more to go here. So one other means that we used to collect feedback was a web map that we set up for each of the 8 project areas. So this allowed people to select a pin and place it on the map to provide information about facilities they might like to see or issues that they think they have been noticing out there or that they have been noticing out there and would like to share more information about. And then it allows you to have a prompt to put more information in to spell out what it is that you're commenting upon. And this was another really successful way to get additional feedback on each of these areas. You can see here that the Moreland Middle School area and Buena Vista neighborhoods each had over 100 comments placed on their web maps, and we had over 450 total across the 8 web maps. The web map was available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, so that we were able to provide a connection to even more members of our community in that way. Right now, those have all been closed since those projects have wrapped up, but each of them were open at the time of the event, in advance of the event, and were open afterwards. And actually, you can still access them to see the comments that were placed. They just aren't allowing any new comments at this point. As was the theme elsewhere, on the web maps, particularly in the Buena Vista neighborhood here, there were a lot of comments related to speeding within the neighborhood, cut-through traffic, and those two types of uses leading to people who are not necessarily going through stop sign controlled intersections in a way that we would typically want them to. Next slide. So just an overall summary on some of what we heard out there. I would say that the four largest themes that we heard about during the events were related to speeding, visibility, driver behavior, and pedestrian safety. And obviously those are some very broad topic areas, but they did come up quite a bit in each of the events. Speeding, some of that was related, of course, to what we hear about with sideshow activity around the city in places, and you can see the photo there shows, you know, donut marks in the center of an intersection. But in some cases, it's just related to corridors that have quite a bit of capacity, but off-peak periods don't use all of that capacity. So like Kirtner Avenue, speeds have a tendency to creep up outside of the peaks when there are fewer people using the roadway. And then some of the neighborhoods, there's speeding related to people who may be using those as cut-through routes and aren't treating them as neighborhood streets like we might prefer that they did. Visibility, a very common thing, was related to obstructions from parked cars, as well as lighting conditions that can be challenging for seeing pedestrians in overnight hours. You can see in the photo there that in some cases, parking in neighborhoods is in such high demand that people are illegally parking. And so this vehicle is actually parked adjacent to a fire hydrant, but that still leads to a sight distance impediment for people that are trying to make a turn from the side street where this photo was taken. Driver behavior, of course, runs a gamut, runs all across many different areas, from people who are not observing stop signs and stop lights as the most common. But there were a few other things that were observed there, most of it around speed limits, obviously, so that's kind of interrelated with speeding, but then also a variety of other traffic laws that people are choosing not to comply with in some conditions. And then pedestrian safety, in many cases that was related to lack of sidewalks in some neighborhoods that don't have them in all locations. And then I think we heard a lot of discussion earlier about the Tully and Monterey intersection, Tully, Kirtner, and Monterey. In some cases, it's just very large crossing distances and signal operations that can be challenging for pedestrians. Next slide. So the goal of the project, or one of the goals, is to then start, identifying recommendations of things that can address these. So for speeding, obviously one of the ubiquitous recommendations is traffic calming measures, whether those be vertical, horizontal, or otherwise. What you see here is obviously speed humps, which are a pretty high bar to clear in terms of justifying speed humps specifically. Obviously, the city does have traffic calming guidelines that would help determine what the appropriate treatments are in different locations based on the data and based on the feedback we've received, but are one of the treatments that can be considered. What you see in the visibility slide there is really just corner extensions that are helping to make the crossings more visible and kind of daylighting so that you can tell where pedestrians are, where bicyclists are, and where vehicles are relative to one another. And high visibility crosswalks certainly help with that as well. But really, I do want to key in on the fact that what you're seeing in the visibility photo there kind of cuts across all of these things. It enhances pedestrian safety by reducing crossing distance. It tends to address speeding by making the street feel less wide open, less like a racetrack, so to speak, and can also help to reinforce what the correct driver behavior is by making it very clear and well delineating where people are supposed to be driving and how they should be behaving. Driver behavior, of course, can be education and compliance, one piece of that, and then also traffic calming improvements that we've been discussing can help address that. You see here a picture of a speed feedback sign. Those have been shown to have pretty good efficacy as well. And then a variety of pedestrian safety improvements, mostly overlapping the other treatments we were just discussing here, but then we also have tools in our toolbox like leading pedestrian intervals that you see in this photo where the walk sign comes on before the light turns green to make it so that pedestrians can be in the crosswalk in a spot where they're really highly visible to drivers before the drivers have the opportunity to go as well. So the next steps for the project, really, we are in the process of finalizing, if you want to go to the next slide, finalizing the recommendations for these various corridors. And what comes next really is then, once you have a suite of potential improvements in these neighborhoods or on these corridors, the city then is able to look for funding opportunities. In some cases, these may be grant funding, as there are both state and federal grants to address many of these issues around safety, but especially where they overlap with addressing things like bicycle and pedestrian improvements. There are separate sets of grants for those, as well as, obviously local funding can be applied to some of these. And then within those recommendations, we're also flagging those which are opportunities for quick build improvements. So where you can do things like we talked about on Center Road, and not necessarily be 5, 10 plus years out from some of these projects, hopefully being able to start to move the needle sooner than that. So, with that, that's really a summary overview of the project. Just want to open the floor up for any other thoughts from Jesse and Cordell, or any questions, and thank you all for letting us share.
Yeah, thank you very much. We'll open it up for comments or questions from the committee, and I see a hand raised. We have Michael Brio.
Yeah, thanks for that presentation. It all looks really good. Just a question. So obviously, like speed bumps or humps are probably not appropriate in most situations, particularly on some of the arterial streets that you guys are looking at. But I'm curious about, well, as like with speed humps, I'm curious about, or similar to that, is traffic circles. So I understand that those won't be appropriate, for example, in arterial, but maybe, are you guys considering that on some of the smaller streets, maybe like Via Valiente or some of the other streets that are not 4-lane arterials? Is that something that's being explored at all?
Yeah, and I can defer to some of the city staff as well, but generally we consider, depending on the context, I would say traffic circles or curb extensions are both pretty good applications for those kinds of locations. Your general goal is to change the comfort level for the driver, in a sense, to make them feel like they need to maneuver through the intersection slower. And one way to do that, to deflect them outwards, would be the traffic circle. And the opposite way to deflect them inwards would be the curb extension. So I think those are often both potential improvement types to be looked at depending on the context.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for the question. All right, looking for other hands from the committee. Not seeing anything. I'll say thank you as well for your work, for gathering information. I was able to attend one of the events and be able to follow the virtual walkabout. It was actually very helpful, and I think nothing beats being able to get out there and actually see it hands-on. But it was actually, I think, functioned very well virtually. And you get a different, view. You get to move through the neighborhood a lot more quickly. Obviously, you get to see, more of the intersections, more of the corridor as you're scanning through virtually. And so I feel that went well, and appreciated the participation and the feedback that we're getting. Look forward to the progress.
I had one more question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
That's okay. The lower hand thing, you never know if it's been up for a while or you just raise it again. So it's great that this is all quick build because we can do stuff really fast, but I'm wondering, is the goal, or could the goal be that over time, as resources permit, that some of these quick build things could become more permanent infrastructure? An example of that is 10th and 11th Street next to where I live, where there was just paint and there was kind of these temporary bollard thingies, and then eventually it became more concrete barriers. I didn't know if that's something that's sort of being contemplated as we test these things out and do a quick build, that ultimately, if they really make sense, they could be something more permanent.
I can answer that one. The answer to that is yes. basically the overall strategy for the quick build program under Vision Zero is to have the quick build phase be the testing, making sure that the project is, well, first off, do quick build because you can build it faster. You know, that's the main pitch of quick build, is that we can quickly design and implement it and do it cheaply. But then we plan to be doing post-project evaluations. That's something that we're working on as part of our build robust data analytics tools. So the product that Urban Logic is working on for us will allow us to look at before and after data after projects are installed. So if, for example, Center Road is completed, let's say now, or maybe last month, then a year from now, we would have a full year of after data. And so we'd be able to compare that against the before data. And then, you know, see if the project is performing as desired, basically meaning that crashes and injuries are being reduced. And then after that point, that's when we'd want to be applying for the capital money to build out a project that was a quick build project as a capital project.
Awesome. Thanks, Jesse.
Okay, I'm gonna pose a couple questions, hopefully spur some thought, just to see if we can gather some feedback. Task force meetings are not as effective if we're not getting as much feedback from our partners. So just a couple questions, and maybe people can ponder, and then I'll ask a couple specific questions of the county and BTA partners. So first off, based on what we've seen in the presentation, wondering if anybody has any feedback as far as specifically how we can maybe improve, or just where we should be focusing outreach in our hard to reach communities. Any bits of advice or feedback on that? Any input on in general how the walk audits might be improved, especially for somebody that was able to participate? I'm not sure if others were. Any concerns about these particular 8 locations? And I don't know if there's a slide that you can show the locations again. If you don't mind, just kind of go back to that.
I'll bring it up in just a second.
Perfect. Thanks, Jesse. So yeah, any potential concerns on the locations? And so hopefully if there's any feedback or advice, we'll take that. And I will have a question specifically for some of our county partners. And maybe Harry can lead if possible, but I'm curious what kind of safety review work you do for expressways. For example, Almond Expressway or Capitol Expressway and the intersections, and those in particular, which are priority safety corridors maintained by the county.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm going to ask Anath to weigh in as well. He's our traffic engineer here in the county. And unfortunately, Ellen, our transportation planner, had to get off to get into another meeting. But just a couple of things I wanted everyone to be aware of. You know, first of all, I mean, safety is a really big concern. And one corridor that we're particularly troubled by, and we have had, I'd say some of our, I don't have the data, but some of our more serious KSIs has been the Capitol Expressway corridor, particularly in Seven Trees, through the Seven Trees area. And we are very interested in, you know, learning how your process is going to go. Particularly, one of the things that we've been concerned about is because the corridor has such long distances between traffic signals, that there's a lot of crossing that's unprotected. Now, I'm not sure what a good solution is, but I'm fascinated to see how the fencing project's going to go on the Monterey corridor. So we're very interested in that. We're also going to be participating in a meeting being held by Councilmember Esparza to look at the Monterey Corridor. Even though we don't really have any of the roads there, we do have a county pocket in that area, which is a county urban area. So that's one thing. You know, we do, the second thing I wanted to mention is something that Ellen's working on, which is the active transportation plan that we're going to work on this year, which is to evaluate all the county roads for their ability well, first of all, for their bicycle and pedestrian or alternate mode capacity, really what we're going to be doing ultimately in the long run with the expressway system in terms of bikes and peds. So it's a study. We were at Viva Calle, we talked to a lot of people. We had a booth out there. We've hired Alta. Alta is our consultant. And over the next year, we hope to engage. Now, one of the trickiest areas for us is the integration between the county road and the local jurisdiction. Obviously, we have 15 jurisdictions and various and different levels of interest in partnering and abilities to partner, where we have kind of gaps in roadways. And I'll just use a couple of examples that might enlighten the group. Bascom Avenue. So Bascom Avenue is a corridor that extends, if you start at one end, Santa Clara, goes into San Jose for a period, moves into the county in front of the, all the way through Burbank and in front of the county hospital. Then it moves back into San Jose, and then it moves into Campbell and ultimately Los Gatos. So you can see that these White Road would be a good example of one that goes in and out, where we need to coordinate and make sure that our systems are congruent with the cities. So maybe a little bit of a meandering answer. I'm sorry about that, but just to fill you in on a couple of things we're doing. I wonder if Anath can just fill you in on how we evaluate our data and how we use that to program improvements. Councilmember Perales or chairperson, if I'm going on too long, let me know, or if you want me to shift that, because I want to stay through the chair.
No, actually, we're ahead of schedule. So Anath, happy to hear some feedback there too.
Yeah, thank you. So we use the program called the Crossroads, and then we get similar data from it. You know, we have collision data. We also look at where the high incident locations are and see what improvements can be done. We try to, look for trends, and then hopefully we can stop that and come up with projects that can help. If we can identify exactly what caused it. Most of these pedestrian collisions, sometimes they are, if you look at who's at fault, that's coming from the data, from the police report. Some of these are pedestrians that are jaywalking or not paying attention to the signals and things like that. So we look at that data, and then there's definitely a piece of education. And also, we're also looking at, is enforcement necessary for pedestrian behavior and also bicycles behavior? Sometimes they're going on the wrong side of the road. It's the most convenient way to do it. And also, like Harry mentioned, our crossings are pretty long from intersection to intersection. So if they're in the mid block, it's a quick walk across the expressway. They may just take and do that. We have a location on near Kirtner on Almaden Expressway, where that comes to mind, where people, we have a median barrier in the middle, but people are actively crossing in that area. So these are some issues that are out there. Maybe education also needs to include pedestrian and bicycle education, and also enforcement. Maybe if they see someone doing wrong, maybe they can also stop them and educate them. I don't know whether citing them, but at least, if it's a ped and bicycle violation, it will be good to educate them also. We constantly look at this data on a quarterly basis, and then we look at what projects that we can do that can prevent some of these collisions. That's typically, what we do at the county.
Yes, thank you. And then I did see Joe raised his hand. Joe, go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Raul. First of all, I appreciate the virtual walkthroughs. I was able to participate, or at least view the Jackson Avenue and Moreland locations, and it was very telling that the older adults have a big participation and stake in this, but also, as it's pointed out, driver behavior, but pedestrian behavior and bicyclist behavior on the part of older adults. And ARP traditionally has done a very proactive thing with our constituents in driver safety, but perhaps the data should bear out that we could do more in the pedestrian and bicyclist safety area. From our means of outreach to, we have about 70,000 members residing within the city of San Jose. And so perhaps it's more instrumental and we can engage when we come up with a recommendation, a communication plan about recommendations. But certainly we have interest in, analyzing the data to see to what extent older adults either contribute to or to the problem or are victims associated with the problem, or probably both.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Joe. And was that it, Joe? Okay. Anand?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up one more point. In terms of the signal timing was brought up from Steve as part of the study. So one of the things that we do at the county intersections is that we have pedestrian sensors that we have installed on most of these expressway intersections, where it automatically extends the pedestrian walk time if we see a pedestrian that's still in the crosswalk at the end of the pedestrian time. So that's something that we did, started doing that about maybe 10 years ago. See, we have about 50% of our expressway intersections that have the sensors. So we continuously, as we do projects, we're installing these sensors. So that'll help address in case if there's a timing is an issue. So the timing gets automatically extended if the pedestrian still is seen inside the crosswalk. Thank you.
Let me just elaborate on that so that everybody's clear. That's particularly helpful for maybe seniors, people who are mobility impaired, because the standard for timing on the pedestrian phase is 3 feet per second. Is that right enough?
3.5.
3.5 feet per second. But if the person is mobility impaired and they can't move at 3.5 feet per second, we use a microwave sensor on our traffic signal. And if that pedestrian isn't making progress, our sensor will detect that and extend the green time for the pedestrian until they complete it across the intersection. That is a standard that we established, and we invented it, and we got approval from it from what is it called? The California, not the MUTCD.
CTCDC and also FHWA.
CTCDC. So this is a microwave sensor that is accommodating for mobility impairment. One concern that we do have is we have impairment. We have the mobility impairment that we're certainly trying to figure out. We haven't been able to get a good handle on whether or not there's cognitive impairments and or drug or alcohol impairments on the case of some of these KSIs. And I didn't hear that being reported, and I didn't know how that information was going to be coming out, whether that was through the coroner's office. I assume some of this stuff. And that relates to both the driver and the victim. And so I'm still kind of looking forward to kind of hearing what the what the analysis is going to show on that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Anand.
So just the same question before we leave this topic and then go to public forum or open forum. For our partners at BTA, similar question as I asked of the county, curious what sort of safety review work you do for your intersections and any potential priority safety corridors, if you can explain.
Sure. This is Angela Gaeta for VTA. So in terms of, well, there's two things to consider when we're placing our facilities throughout the city for service, particularly with bus facilities, bus shelters. There is a comprehensive study that's done both in terms of traffic and safety, traffic impacts, and then also pedestrian impacts. We look at pedestrian channeling, and then there are other things that are not necessarily related to safety that go along with making sure that there are bus pads in place. But most of it is around pedestrian safety, pedestrian channeling, vehicle safety. We do cut out curbs for particular locations of bus facilities so that our operators have a safe sort of area to exit the bus if necessary or take a break. So we've got a number of things. That's just related to the placement of our facilities. Once our facilities are placed, if we're seeing a high number of incidents in that particular area, we go and we reevaluate. It's mostly tied to each incident. We do what we term, I guess, a sort of a root cause analysis, and we complete an incident report, and we look at trends to determine what, if anything, can be addressed from BTA's side. We reach out to in this case, it would be the city of San Jose, and we've done that on a number of occasions, asking for improvements in lighting or trimming back of foliage, things of that nature. We look at our signage to see if any of that can be improved. And then switching to the light rail system, we look at the same things. What might have caused an incident, if there's anything that we need to do on BTA facilities that could enhance safety. And then we also look at, again, the lighting, foliage, things of that nature. And it's not just with the city of San Jose. Because we operate throughout the county of Santa Clara, we do reach out to each jurisdiction when we see trends, when we see increases in incidents, regardless of whether it's our bus system or our light rail system, to try and work with the jurisdictions to see if there's any way we can enhance safety or improve upon what we're already doing. So different studies depending on the systems, and different studies depending on the timing.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that. Lauren?
Hi, thank you. Lauren from VTA Bike and Ped program. So I just wanted to add from a transportation planning side, the map here overlaps really nicely with the focus areas that we identified several years ago when we did a countywide analysis and looked for priority areas for pedestrians. So we looked at bus ridership, as well as a history of crashes, as well as several different geographic factors to identify, I think it was 12 focus areas in the county. And actually, Farron Pierce helped us with that work. And we went out and did walk audits in the area and identified some potential improvements that could happen there. And so I think there's probably about 5 of the 8 focus areas on this map overlap with the focus areas identified in VTA's pedestrian access to transit plan. So it's nice to know that you all are doing the walk audits in that location.
Great, thank you for sharing. Okay. That'll conclude our commentary from the task force here. we'll move now into our open forum. We invite those of you who are attending with us to be able to speak on any discussion items that we have. For those that haven't participated before by Zoom, you can use the raise hand function, or if you're on the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand and then *6 when you're called on to unmute yourself. Our staff will instruct you to unmute yourself, and you may speak, and we will keep the time at 2 minutes. And we'll ask for our panelists that we don't respond until we've gone through all the speakers. We may have a little bit of time actually today to do some response if need be. And I'll turn it over now to Thao Nguyen from DOT to be able to facilitate our open forum.
Just a moment while we put that slide on the screen.
It looks like Tao may be having some technical difficulties, so let me just jump in here and help her out. Okay, so I'm going to call on the first number ending with 5140. You can mute yourself.
Yeah, it makes me sick that you guys want to give people fines instead of warnings. I hope every one of you who thinks fines are cool, that includes you, Pam Foley, gets a fine. Whether it's speeding or flagpoles or sheds or fences, I hope you get it. Pam Foley wants your stimulus check. Pam Foley wants your retirement check, what's in your 401k, so she can.
Can you stay on topic, please?
Power.
This has nothing to do with, we're here talking about traffic at Vision Zero.
It's got everything to do with it, Pam. It's got, because fining is a way that you think you're going to go down to zero for traffic fatalities. Maybe you guys should put some more money into where these fatalities are. Sounds like you guys have no money for it, right? But you think you're going to give out tickets and that's going to make it better? I mean, what you need to do maybe is get a plastic bubble for everybody to live in. That's what you need to do to get to Vision Zero. And anytime I hear zero tolerance, zero this, zero that, I think of a pile of skulls. That's what they had in Cambodia for year zero. Maybe you guys want to do something like that. I don't know. But you guys are always talking about zero everything, zero emissions. It makes no sense at all. All these fines, I hope everyone in your family gets one, Pam. And let's start with the people at San Jose deal.
I'm going to move on to the next one.
Yeah, thank you, Lam. Sorry, I know we're having trouble here with the timer, and so I am timing myself as well. And I don't know if you were timing as well, Lam, but if we don't get it functioning, then we'll have that on in the background. Thanks.
Yeah, apologies. I got it started. So I'm going to call on Tessa next. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, good. Thank you. Tessa Woodman C. Well, I agreed with Michael on the issue of the last caller, Michael, and that he was saying that we need to, put our money to create engineers to solve the problem. And, that's the big issue, is that we have to put the money to engineer our roads for safety. And that's what we're not doing. And on top of that, I feel we do not have a proper way of communicating the ills of our community, our policymakers, and not only to our politicians who don't listen, but even that there needs to be some kind of record that we can, record these things in, and that they get put into the public policy agenda. For instance, Stockton Avenue, where I live, there is so many problems here, and I've been telling my council member, Deb Davis, and she doesn't do anything. And then even when we have all this development, this goes back even to Pierluigi Oliverio in terms of all the development. We're not getting anything from the developers to fix Stockton Avenue. We're not getting that, or the other intersecting streets. So how do we get this to get fixed, And even when my husband got hit on his bicycle at Stockton and Taylor, and we need a left-hand turn signal, or the person who died at Stockton and Lenzen. And then on top of it, when we talk about the fact that the person who died, number 26, who just died, was because he or she was in her wheelchair going too slowly, quote unquote, and she got run over on somebody on Meridian and Parkmore. And then we have this technology, but we're not implementing it. And then I say, hey, measure B. We need to realign Measure B to be about pedestrian and bicycle safety, not about BART. That has so many in problems in terms of our climate crisis and what we're going ahead and developing and using cement. But that needs to change, and we need to be back to basics.
Next, I'm going to call B. Beekman. You can now unmute yourself.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Caller 5140 usually comes on too strong, but I think he had a very interesting point that I felt was valid to this discussion about the fines versus warnings. To go on with my items, I think the most important thing I can offer this time for this fall, we're going to be going through a whole bunch of new AI data collection planning in San Jose and different data collection models happening. I think we really have to be clear to practice the ideas of good open democracy and the civil rights and civil protections that good data collection practices can offer. All know the ALPR work of the past few years. They've really narrowed down their data collection times. It used to be a year they would have to keep data. They can now do that in 3 months based on good civil rights and civil protection and democracy practices. Really good luck to ourselves. How we, just work to be human this fall. 48 seconds. We just had a Via Calle this past weekend. That Viva Calle, those are some of the initial reasons and intentions of Vision Zero and purposes. Let's try to work for that community good spirit. About the Kurtner area, good luck how you can possibly narrow the roads there, what that will take to do that. And good luck with the KSI statistics. You tried talking about homeless as people who've been killed recently. That's a really good start. There's real issues going on about how we're going to talk about the future of KSI statistics. You try to do some good work today. Let's keep up good, open, accountable practices with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to go to Gina Leblanc. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. Yeah, this is Gina Leblanc. I'm a bereaved mother. My son Kyle was killed in 2016 at Kurtner Avenue and Highway 87 when he was trying to access the Kurtner Avenue light rail station. Yeah, so that was 5.5 years ago, and I've been advocating as hard as I possibly can. And I'm not angry, I'm just sad. I'm excited that Kurtner Avenue is going to be seeing some changes, but I'm just so frustrated that it's so slow. It is so slow. I come in the background of being a neonatal intensive care unit nurse, and in hospitals, if there's a problem, we document it, we jump on it right away. There's a rapid response to try to prevent any future problems. And when I see that there were 5 fatalities around that intersection of Monterey Road and Kurtner Avenue, my heart just breaks because I remember when 2 happened in 1 month, and I just wish that you all could work faster. I know maybe it's a pipe dream, but the urgency, I feel the urgency, and every life lost is one too many. And that's everyone in our community, unhoused, disabled, mentally, cognitively impaired. It doesn't matter. We all have a right to use our roads. And blaming a pedestrian or, looking to blame it, that's not what Vision Zero is about. It's about having complete streets and a safe systems approach, and especially designing the roads differently and doing what you can. I think I'm going to be cut off, but I'm excited about the school streets idea because I've heard other countries have tried that and it's been really popular. And I would love to see more of the school streets areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Molly Macleod. Please unmute yourself.
My name is Molly Macleod. A couple of things. First, I did not participate after the first, 10 minutes of the Kirtner meeting in June because there were no captions available. Made repeated requests, made requests at the beginning, didn't happen. During the last 3 months, I've been emailing back and forth. I finally got the transcript on September 16th from Steve at Fair and Peer, whatever it is. And that's way too slow. And also this week, I got a request from Jesse saying, hey, Molly, can you help us out on the accessibility stuff? Which I'm happy to do. I speak up at lots of city and county meetings about accessibility and best practices. But as the mother of a son who was killed crossing the street in 2018 and who will always be 23, whose birthday is coming up in October 2nd, I find it kind of hard to be asked to be doing the consultants paid $75,000 for work done from February to September. And I've got some questions like, were any wheelchair users or people using walkers participating in any of these walkable surveys? What did the walkable surveys include? Did they have anything to do with access check-ins? What about these microwave sensors? How many are in the city of San Jose? There's all sorts of questions, and there isn't a way to be a more active participant during this meeting, although we've certainly got lots of expertise in a number of the areas, because the webinar format isn't set up so that people could send the questions so that the task force members could say, hey, maybe we want to know how many matters or who was involved and what the survey format is, things like that, because I know that people care about this issue and accessibility a lot. But waiting to the very end when you don't know when you'll get to speak and having more than 2 minutes of content, hard.
Thank you. Next, I have Paul Soto. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. It is from these Vision Zero meetings I've been in, practically all of them, is that 38% of all traffic fatalities and serious injuries occur on only 3% of the landmass. Now, I think we need to cross-reference that information with poverty and what is going on. What is going on with the demographics? I also learned that you don't collect the data when a person is killed or a serious injury. Specific demographic data is not taken into account. Race is not taken into account, nor income level is not taken into account. However, if there is a traffic death in a particular area, what you do is you get the demographic information from the area and then use that to support a greater dollar amount on your grant. So what this means is that morally and ethically, what you're doing is you're extracting money from impoverished areas. So this means that there is money in poverty. There is money to be made from the poor, but only from their death, not their life. Their life is worthless. It's meaningless. See, all of your traffic bumps and all that stuff, and I don't mean to impugn your work because it is very important work. However, nothing was going to prevent those accidents because there's an element of indifference and apathy towards just simply human life. Now, your work is not going to avoid that part. You're doing what you can. I appreciate the microwave sensors, but I agree. Where are they? And how many do you have? And in what areas? And what information are you collecting from them? The fact that you had mentioned alcohol, that was very offensive, because there are people that have diabetic issues and they can't move because it affects their legs. So there's all these other issues that you could have named, but you went straight for the throat. Okay, and that's cool because you identified who you are more than who they are.
Thank you. Next, I have Robin. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. And first of all, thank you so much to the whole task force and all its members for your work. I really appreciate all the progress the city has made in the last year. And I agree it's not fast enough, but at least it's accelerating. As a father of 2 children in elementary school, I'm obviously very excited about everything you do to make school zones safer. And as many on this call know, school zone safety is what kind of brought me into Vision Zero advocacy. I got involved when John Risto and his team from DOT came to our school, Orchard, just up the street from the Superintendent Warren's office, and told us they want to use a really small, quiet road to build a bigger road and put more cars in our school zones. And we as a community have been fighting DOT for 3 years, trying to keep our school and our street safe. Heavily opposed by John Risto and his team. So I'm really torn. I'm so glad to hear that DOT put such an emphasis on school safety. But on the other hand, why are we as community then spending $10,000s of dollars legal fees on fighting the city in court to keep our school zone safe and car free, exactly as the Vision Zero Task Force here once said. So I just want to use this opportunity to encourage staff, and I know it's mostly staff. I'm very thankful for the support that the council members Perales and Foley have shown to our community. So really staff to think about how can we use the limited fund that the city has, instead of fighting each other and on legal fees, how can we use them on more quick build? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Jason Hemp. Please unmute yourself. You'll need to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thanks for having this forum. My name is Jason Hemp, San Jose resident, and a member of the No Digital Billboards in San Jose group. And I had a comment and a question. First, I joined late, so I apologize if what I ask is a little out of context or if you've already covered it. But I was wondering if the task force has considered the impact of signage on collisions or fatalities in the city. And in particular, my concern is about the upcoming effort to install digital billboards with changing signs and different animations. And also, my comment is, I heard towards the end of the presentation, sorry, I'm a little out of breath. I heard towards the end of the presentation that there's some crosswalk sensors to indicate if someone's in the crosswalk to extend the light duration. I appreciate that. That sounds like a great implementation of technology. I hope we can look at expanding that throughout the city. So those are my comments and questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Back to you, Councilmember Perales.
Right. Thank you very much. And we do actually have just a couple minutes before I close out. So I did want to go back to Molly McLeod's question to see if Steve Davis can answer in regards to, can you answer on the participation from individuals in our community, in our disabled community?
So if referring to the events themselves, we didn't explicitly poll participants on that, so we don't have that information.
have we done any other specific outreach then directly to maybe representatives of that community, like Molly herself or others?
I'm not aware, and unless Cordell knows otherwise, I'm not sure if there was specific outreach to those communities. We did outreach to any groups that were in the vicinity of the area, but I don't know if that explicitly represented those communities.
Okay, I would agree with Molly. Obviously, that's an important demographic, especially as we know. I think that how they can be subject to being victims at a higher rate due to like what we're talking about with the sensors, right? They're maybe being able to cross more slowly than others, as we know with youth, right, or seniors, or just anybody that might be mobility challenged. So I do think that would be wise, right, to have some specific, not only feedback, but then demographics of those who are providing the feedback as we're gathering the info. And if we have to do, I think, specific outreach, sounds like we did reach out. Jesse, maybe you reached out to try to see if Molly could help, is what she was saying. But I think that if we don't have that data, then we should actually try to solicit it. Is that what you were going for, Jesse, when you reached out?
We're beginning another study about inclusive community engagement. And so we wanted to include Molly's input in that study because we know that she's very interested and could be, I'm sure she's linked to a lot of organizations that know best practices. So we're interested to include all of those as we build that study, which is happening right now. So we're interviewing people to be part of that. And yeah, I guess we also are the architect of the outreach and engagement effort that Steve Davis and Farron Piers did. So we're interested to get this feedback because we'll be doing another 5 locations next year that are also funded by OTS. These grants go every year. So we've been lucky to receive that grant every year recently. And in next year's group of 5 locations that have not yet been selected, and also the consultant has not yet been selected, we can include that.
Yeah, I think there's a high likelihood that you have people that are mobility challenged in every single neighborhood around any of these corridors in the city. So I think, it would be safe to say that we'd want to get their feedback. And then what I'd like to do is next year when we ask the question, hopefully we can get the answer that says, this is how many people we were able to have participate that were more mobility challenged in getting feedback from them. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you everybody for being here today, engaging with us in our discussion. As we go forward with the task force, we will continue to encourage participation from all of our task force members. The next task force meeting will be on Friday, December 10th from 9 till 11. And the next Vision Zero updated City Council is actually coming in November at the Transportation and Environment, or T&E Committee. And all attendees will be given a short survey following this meeting. If you can kindly fill that out, it would be appreciated. Once again, stay safe and enjoy the upcoming weekend. Thank you.